After 6 decades of silence, a mystery that haunted American history may finally be solved. In 1962, 3 inmates vanished from Alcatraz, the nation's most escape-proof prison. For years, officials insisted they drowned. But now, cutting-edge computer modeling, declassified letters, and reanalyzed debris have changed everything. Scientists have reconstructed the tide patterns, survival windows, and escape route, and the results are astonishing. Could Frank Morris and the Angland Brothers have actually made it to freedom? Or did the bay's icy grip claim them after all? After 63 years, the truth has surfaced, and it's not what anyone expected. Impossible to escape Alcatraz, perched on a rocky islet 125 miles offshore, was designed to squash hope. From its opening in 1934 to its closure in 1963, this maximum security prison was intended to be the end of the line. Cells were tiny, wire fences hummed with electricity. Watchtowers loomed over an unforgiving landscape. Escape meant not just eluding guards, but facing freezing cold water and treacherous tides. No escape had ever succeeded, although at least 14 men tried. Most drowned, others were caught. The Rock's legend grew from fact. It was unconquerable. Inside, conditions were brutal. Prisoners spent long hours alone in their cells, with strict head counts and little human contact. Every privilege had to be earned. Outbursts of violence were common when desperation boiled over. You felt like you were walking on the edge all day long, one former inmate later said. That environment bred ingenuity, but also strict control. Alcatraz was more than a prison. It was a fortress built on fear, isolation, and psychological strain. The chilly water surrounding the Rock was another layer of defense. With temperatures between 50 and 55 degrees, a swimmer faced hypothermia in minutes. The currents were fast, dangerous, and unpredictable. Even strong swimmers who reached the bay found themselves fighting shifting tides with no clear path to shore. It reinforced the idea that escape was a death sentence, not a remote possibility. Yet, that impenetrable myth would face its first real challenge in June 1962. The Rock's reputation had been absolute for nearly 30 years. No one saw it as flawed, but that changed, and the legend cracked under by its own weight. The Rock's myth of inescapability held strong until one night in June 1962, and what happened then tore through decades of belief. That fateful evening would rewrite the history of Alcatraz forever, because it showed how men could exploit precision, courage, and calculation to turn nightmares into possibility. June 11, 1962. Between 10:30 and 11 p.m. on June 11, 1962, alarm bells hadn't gone off, but something had changed. Guards on the cell block discovered 3 bunks empty. Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin were gone. Instead of bodies, they found decoys, dummy heads tucked into blankets, complete with false hair and painted features. This was no messy last-minute escape. It was intelligence under pressure. By dawn, the nation's imagination lit up. If these men had pulled it off, everything thought unbreakable about Alcatraz was wrong. Overnight, the myth that the Rock was invulnerable was shattered. Something far more dangerous had occurred. Possibility was born. Reporters buzzed. Criminal investigators scrambled. Did they die in the bay? Or did they vanish? Became the central question. No bodies were found. No trace of the men, dead or alive. Nationwide, people began to speculate. Did they simply vanish? Did they reach shore? The lack of any physical evidence sparked decades of fascination. Even now, 60-plus years later, the story is still debated. The power of that night lies in its ambiguity. Alcatraz might have been designed to destroy hope, but that night, 3 men found a way to preserve it. That escape would become one of the most legendary prison narratives of all time. It wasn't just about fleeing, it was a direct challenge to an entire system built on control. The men may have vanished, but their plan had roots in decades of human resilience. It didn't rely on chance, it was built on brains, bravery, and precision. And leading that effort was Frank Morris, a man whose life and genius would shape the narrative and become a legend of its own. Frank Morris. Frank Lee Morris was no amateur. Orphaned young, he built a life on persistence. By the time he arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960, he already had multiple escape attempts behind him and a reputation for careful planning. Morris wasn't violent, he was methodical. Others described him as intelligent, calm, and unwavering in pursuit of freedom. Within weeks of arrival, he sized up the prison and its routines and its weaknesses. He studied cell structures and routines, noting the gaps beneath sinks and the frameworks around vents. Importantly, he aligned with two brothers who were both skilled and trusted, John and Clarence Anglin. Together, they formed a small escape collective. He was the brains, one guard later recalled. He wasn't messing around. Morris led operations with surgical precision. On quiet nights, they scraped away shattered concrete behind sink vents using stolen spoons, saw blades, even a vacuum motor drill. He planned escape windows around music hour when an accordion's notes masked drilling sounds. Every detail was timed, every task delegated. This wasn't desperation, it was strategy. Beyond cell work, Morris built the Raft system out of stolen raincoats, water sealed by steam from pipes, gasping across a deadly bay. He designed dummy heads to trick guards. His plan was both bold and precise, reflecting his personality. Whether or not he survived, Morris's blueprint rewrote what was considered possible on the rock itself. Frank Morris's genius was only half the story. He needed partners who could build, sew, and stand by him under pressure. And that's where the Angland Brothers had come in, siblings who took a plan and turned it into reality. Their coordinated efforts would turn Morris's vision into escape action. The Angland Brothers' role. John and Clarence Anglin weren't mere sidekicks. They were essential architects of the escape. Born just 18 months apart, the brothers shared a fierce loyalty and a knack for hands-on work. They first met Morris in Alcatraz's mess hall, bonding over escape stories and shared frustration. When Morris laid out his plan, the Anglins didn't hesitate. They brought escape experience and the physical skills needed to bring it to life. They tackled the sink vents head-on, engaging in painstaking carving of dummy heads from soap, toothpaste, and real hair. Their craftsmanship was chilling in its realism. One guard later said, "They fooled even the senior officers." While Morris devised the escape blueprint, the Anglins executed, drilling concrete, sewing dummy heads, reinforcing vent shafts. They worked around the clock during permitted music hours and religious services to mask sounds. Their precision extended to crafting the raft and paddles. The Anglins' sewing skills came to the fore. They stitched over 50 stolen raincoats together, sealing seams with steam from prison pipes. The result? A makeshift boat capable of holding 3 men on a treacherous bay. Each panel, stitch, and steering handle was evidence of their determination and ingenuity. Their alliance with Morris was more than convenience. It was brotherhood. Together, the trio rehearsed routes through maintenance tunnels and built contingency plans. The Anglins' shared hardship and teamwork mirrored the collective effort that made the escape possible. They weren't running solo, they were part of a carefully coordinated team. With Morris planning and the Anglins building, another crucial partner was needed. Alan West stepped in, but nearly got left behind. His journey shows how one man's failure to keep pace almost unraveled the whole operation. And yet, his contribution offered the most detailed blueprint of what happened next. Alan West, almost free. Alan West was the 4th member of the group, organized, willing, but awed by the scale of the escape. As a newer inmate, he was paired with the Anglins and Morris early on, mainly in tunnel digging and dummy head assembly. West was practical, detail-oriented, but less experienced with complex escape plans. Despite that, Morris trusted him and assigned him critical tasks. West was intimately involved in tunnel carving and dummy creation. He recalls disguising holes behind sleepers and assisting in raincoat collection. In the early hours of June 11th, he followed the escape plan along with the others. But fate intervened. His vent route became clogged due to shifting pipes and interior walls that didn't align. It cost him precious time. By dawn, West found himself still trapped midway, locked behind a tunnel that wouldn't open until it was too late. Guards spotted him inside. His failed breakout didn't escape attention. West was recaptured within hours, but his story was vital. He debriefed investigators, offering detailed diagrams and steps that would prove invaluable to historians and enthusiasts. His account turned rumors into reality. He confirmed the crawl from sink shafts to utility corridors, climbing to the roof with the others. His words helped reconstruct the escape's anatomy. We worked through the night. We thought we had it until the pipe shifted, and I was stuck. His failure didn't ruin the escape. It immortalized it. Alan West's capture laid bare the escape structure. But while he got caught, the others vanished, and they owed their success to one final stroke of genius. Their plan needed a convincing distraction, and that came in a humble form: dummy heads made to fool the guards and buy crucial time. Dummy heads. The key to the Anglins and Morris slipping away was deception, using fake heads to trick the guards. They scavenged soap, toothpaste, toilet paper, and real hair from the prison barbershop for their creations. Working secretly, they molded the materials into human-like shapes, painting features with shoe polish and coffee. They were so realistic, we could have sworn they were alive, one guard would later note. Careful placement was everything. The trio stuffed blankets and clothes under the dummy heads to simulate bodies under sleeping covers. The heads were set on pillows, half hidden in bunks. No guard bothered to shake beds. They looked in, saw bodies in the bunks, and left, believing all was well. That delay was gold. It gave the escapees time to vanish. These decoys weren't crude. They were convincing replicas that accounted for blanket folds, angles, and cell lighting. Their construction speaks to the Anglin's hands-on skills and Morris's appreciation for misdirection. It wasn't artistry, it was survival. Their success lay not just in creating the heads, but in timing their placements seamlessly into daily routine. Guards didn't check twice, and morning count came and went. It was after roll call that the truth emerged. By then, the escapees were long gone. That moment marked the first crack in Alcatraz's armor. It showed that deception could topple even a prison built on control and physical barriers. Once the heads did their work, it was time for the real escape. A covert journey through tunnels, shafts, and rooftops. That next phase required patience, strength, and precise coordination. What followed was no spur-of-the-moment dash. It was a surgical escape orchestrated under the cover of night. Digging to freedom. Beneath the false heads and shredded paper decoys lay the escape route, a tunnel back to freedom. The trio began by drilling through the concrete wall behind their cell's sinks. They used broken spoons, a homemade saw blade, and a vacuum cleaner motor to clear the rubble. Over countless nights, often during music hour when accordion noise masked their hammering, they chipped through layers of concrete. Inside, they built a false vent cover using a metal sheet from the prison workshop and library paint to match the walls. This clever misdirection ensured guards looking through daily checks saw nothing unusual. Over weeks, their secret holes led into Alcatraz's utility corridors, bypassing locked doors and surveillance. It was a covert demolition that no guard noticed until it was too late. Once in the utility corridor, they climbed a short ladder and popped out onto the prison roof. Timing was everything. They waited for the shift change in the guard tower rotation to avoid detection. In complete silence, they edged their way along the rooftop toward the northeast corner. Their movements were precise, no running, no shouting, just calculated steps by moonlight. By morning, they disappeared over the edge of the island. Their tunnel was cleanly covered, vents reattached, and routine restored. The underground escape had been executed with military precision. Years of planning and makeshift engineering paid off in a few hours of flawless execution. With the tunnel behind them, the escapees faced the treacherous waters of the San Francisco Bay. Their next challenge? A homemade raft crafted under prison walls, something both fragile and ingenious. Could it survive currents that had drowned many before? Their lives depended on what lay ahead. Building the raft from raincoats. Their ticket to the mainland was a raft stitched together from 50 stolen raincoats. Using needle and thread smuggled from the tailor shop, they meticulously sewed panels before bedtime, working by lantern light in a cell corner. Once the hull was shaped, Prison steam pipes supplied hot vapor to seal seams, making it watertight and buoyant. They added life jackets, also made from raincoat scraps, and fashioned a manual air pump out of a makeshift accordion. A paddle came from scrap wood salvaged in the workshop. The result? A 6 by 14-foot vessel built entirely inside the prison, piece by piece, an escape boat born of necessity, skill, and deep hope. The raft was hidden in a workshop stall until the night of the escape. Workers' sounds masked its construction, and no one suspected the purpose behind the pile of coats. By the time dawn revealed the missing rainwear, the trio was already on the water. Their engineering was discreet, creative, and undeniably courageous. Even though conditions were unpredictable, tight, cold possible, patrol boats, they trusted their handmade craft. Their gamble, that ingenuity could beat brute force. And for the first time, Alcatraz's steel walls met their match. Human resourcefulness. But building a raft is only half the battle. Launching it into the bay meant confronting freezing temperatures, swirling tides, and no navigation aids. What came next would test the limits of their planning, and their chances of survival depended on the currents of June 1962. The Icy Crossing. At dusk on June 11th, under cover of darkness, the trio paddled away from Alcatraz's northeast edge. They navigated through jagged rocks and past guard towers, hugging the shoreline before heading north toward Angel Island. Hypothermia was a real risk. Water temperatures hovered around 50 degrees, and night air cut into stolen raincoats. Hours passed. The raid and exit had gone undetected. Morning brought discovery, a makeshift paddle and a bundle of cloth on Angel Island's shore. Fishing crews reported seeing something that looked like a raft heading east. Meanwhile, on Alcatraz, guards launched a frantic search, revealing the escape during the morning count. Most officials dismissed it as suicide by drift. Impossible currents and cold, they said, would claim the trio quickly. Yet in 2014, marine engineers used computer models to track tides, wind, and time of escape. Their conclusion? If they paddled expertly, they could have reached land alive. Angel Island, Tiburon, or even Marin County. Evidence remains elusive, no bodies, no confirmation. But drift analysis and beach debris suggest survival was plausible. The trio vanished in both myth and history, leaving behind only hope, questions, and the idea that escape can outlast steel and ice. Science reopened the mystery decades later, but amid waves and whispers came a startling letter, one that claimed survival and regained hope. In the next segment, we'll dive into that 2013 letter that lit the world on fire and reshaped the story entirely. The 2013 letter. More than 50 years after the escape, a strange letter arrived at a San Francisco police station. Postmarked 2013, it claimed to be from John Anglin, one of the escapees. In it, he confessed to surviving the escape, claimed Frank Morris died in 2005, and said Clarence Anglin passed in 2008. The writer, suffering from cancer, said he would surrender if offered medical treatment. The handwriting was sent for analysis. DNA and fingerprints were inconclusive, but the content matched details only the escapees could have known, specifics from the raft, routes, and habits. Was it real, or a hoax from a master storyteller? Adding weight, investigators recalled other hints over the years. A 1975 photograph surfaced from Brazil, allegedly showing the Angland Brothers alive and smiling. Family members claimed they received unsigned Christmas cards for years. Suddenly, the myth had a new pulse. The FBI didn't confirm the letter's authenticity, but the U.S. Marshals reopened the case. In 2022, they even released age-progressed images of the three men. That letter, mysterious as it was, reopened the floodgates of speculation, impossibility. With the letter reigniting interest, scientists stepped in to challenge decades-old assumptions. The next chapter saw data and engineering confront legend and prove the unthinkable was entirely possible. Science rewrites the myth. In 2014, Dutch researchers at Delft University developed a simulation of the San Francisco Bay, mapping currents, tides, wind patterns, and water temperatures on the night of June 11, 1962. Their conclusion? If the escapees launched between 11 p.m. and midnight, survival was highly plausible. The model showed a narrow window where the raft could drift to Angel Island or Marin County before the strongest currents turned south. Outside of that window, they'd be pulled into the Pacific. But if they timed it right, and the evidence says they did, they could have reached land unseen. The raft's construction also held up to scrutiny. Experts who reviewed its design confirmed it would have supported their weight and stayed afloat long enough to reach shore. Combined with paddle debris found near the Golden Gate, the physical story seemed to align with the science. Science didn't prove they lived, but it shattered the old certainty that no one could survive the swim. As hydrologist Rolf Huck put it, we proved escape was not only possible, it was likely if they were smart enough. The data brought realism to the legend, but even as science provided answers, the biggest mystery remained. What happened after? Did they vanish into a new life or disappear into the sea? The answer lies in silence. Who survived and where? Despite all the modeling, letters, and sightings, no bodies, no bones, and no graves have ever been found. The U.S. Marshal Service, which never closes cases until proof of death, still lists the men as wanted fugitives. Their files remain open, their trail faint. Over the years, scattered reports have emerged. A man claiming to be Clarence Anglin was seen in Florida. A call came into a tip line saying, "They made it, they're fine." Former inmates and guards recalled rumors, silent nods to the unspoken truth. Age-progressed images show what the trio might look like in their 80s. If they survived, they'd be elderly today, fading into the world that forgot their faces. But no confirmed sighting, no solid proof has closed the file. The mystery endures, not because of lack of evidence, but because of how thoroughly they vanished. And perhaps that was always the plan, to not just escape the prison, but disappear from history itself. And that's what makes this story linger. Not just the crime, but the craftsmanship. This wasn't just about escape. It was about outwitting a system, building a legend, and forcing the world to wonder. One last question remains. What this means today? The Alcatraz escape is more than a prison break. It's a symbol of defiance, of human ingenuity under pressure. It reminds us that the impossible is only that until someone finds a way through. The raft, the tools, the plan, they weren't miracles. They were the result of determination and vision. In an age of drones and digital security, this analog escape remains unrivaled. It challenges modern notions of confinement and surveillance. More importantly, it proves that myth can meet method. They didn't break out with force, said author Michael Esslinger. They broke out with brilliance. The cultural impact is massive: films, books, documentaries. But the heart of the story is simple. 3 men, bound by circumstance, believed they could beat the most secure prison in America. And maybe, just maybe, they did. Whether they made it or not, the escape from Alcatraz stands as a lasting question. Not just of crime, but of hope, risk, and resolve. And as long as it remains unanswered, that question will echo across the bay. After more than 6 decades, the legend of the Alcatraz escape still refuses to fade. But now, with advancements in technology, climate modeling, forensic aging, and even long-lost letters brought back into the spotlight, the story feels less like folklore and more like a slow-burning investigation that's finally catching up to the past. The men who pulled off the most daring prison escape in U.S. history didn't leave behind a clear ending, but they left questions, and now science is answering them. From tides to timelines, from sewn raincoats to scattered paddle pieces, the pieces of the puzzle suggest a hard truth. The escape from Alcatraz may not have ended in drowning. It might have ended in freedom. A freedom lived quietly, off the grid, perhaps even overseas. The forensic models support it. The 2013 letter teases it, and the silence that followed only deepens its mystery. We may never know exactly where Frank Morris or the Angland Brothers went. We may never find a body, a grave, or a full confession. But what we do know is that the myth of Alcatraz being inescapable is no longer bulletproof. This proves, said one researcher, that the human drive combined with patience, planning, and a bit of luck can overcome even the most impossible walls. Today, the cells remain empty, the island quiet, the sea still cold. But somewhere out there, maybe in Brazil, maybe in the American South, Someone once knew the ending to this story, and they kept it secret, silent, just like the men who vanished one night in 1962 into the darkness, leaving behind only raincoats, decoys, and a legend. Because in the end, Alcatraz wasn't just about bars and bricks. It was about belief. And these three men may have shattered the strongest one of all, that no one escapes the rock.